The end of private stupidity. Why young people stopped going out. Something strange happened around the beginning of the 21st century. Across much of the developed world, young people began drinking less, going out less, partying less, and taking fewer public social risks. Nightclubs started disappearing, alcohol consumption among adolescents declined. Public youth culture seemed to lose some of its energy. Researchers propose various explanations: health consciousness, stricter regulations, changing social norms, rising costs, dating apps, and later smartphones. Some of these explanations undoubtedly contain part of the truth, but many of them struggle with one problem: timing. The decline appears to begin surprisingly early. In Europe, adolescent alcohol use peaks around the early 2000s and then begins a long decline. This is too early for dating apps, too early for most smartphone effects, too early for major changes in face-to-face socializing, and too early for many of the alcohol regulation often cited as explanations. So what changed? The camera phone revolution. The first camera phones appeared earlier than most people remember. It started in 1999 in Japan. Around 2003-2005, camera phones became common among ordinary young people. For the first time in human history, millions of people carried a camera in their pocket. At first glance, this may seem insignificant. It was not. The camera phone changed something fundamental about social life: the end of being forgotten. For most of history, public embarrassment was temporary. You got drunk, you danced badly, you kissed the wrong person, you made a fool of yourself. A few people saw it. A week later, it was largely forgotten. The cost of social experimentation was limited. The early 2000s changed that. The same mistake could now become a photograph. A photograph could become a file. A file could be forwarded. A forwarded file could become permanent. For the first time, ordinary people had to consider the possibility that an embarrassing moment might follow them indefinitely. The risk was no longer physical, it was reputational. A different explanation. Most discussions about declining nightlife focus on alcohol, but alcohol may not be the main story. It may simply be one of the clearest indicators of a broader phenomenon. The real question is not, why are young people drinking less? The real question is, why are young people taking fewer public social risks? Drinking, partying, clubbing, flirting with strangers, making mistakes, acting foolishly, and losing control are all related activities. They require a willingness to accept temporary embarrassment. The camera phone increased the cost of that embarrassment. Why other explanations struggle? Health culture. Health culture existed long before the decline began. The fitness boom of the 1980s did not produce a collapse in nightlife. Money. Going out is expensive, but money alone does not explain why similar trends appear across different countries around roughly the same period. Nor does it explain why the shift appears before the financial crisis of 2008. Dating apps. Dating apps may have changed social behavior, but they arrived much later than the beginning of the trend. Face-to-face socializing. Research suggests that face-to-face contact declined significantly during the 2010s. But if nightlife and alcohol use started declining around 2003, then reduced face-to-face interaction cannot be the original cause. At most, it may have amplified an existing trend. Alcohol regulation. Many alcohol regulations arrived after the decline was already underway. They may have reinforced the trend, but cannot easily explain its beginning. Drugs. Ecstasy and cocaine remain important within nightlife culture. However, the broader decline appears larger than can be explained by substitution alone. Looking beyond Europe. If this theory is correct, it should not be limited to one country. South Korea appears to fit the pattern surprisingly well. Youth alcohol consumption declined sharply between the mid-2000s and the early 2020s. Japan seems to move in a similar direction. This is important because these societies are culturally very different from Europe. If similar trends appear in very different societies, explanations based on local drinking culture become less convincing. Further research should examine countries that adopted camera phones, mobile internet, and online photo sharing later. If decline in nightlife and youth drinking also occur later in those countries, the argument becomes considerably stronger. Conclusion. For most of human history, public embarrassment was temporary. The cost of social experimentation was limited because mistakes disappeared. The early 2000s changed that. For the first time, ordinary people carried cameras everywhere. Embarrassing moments could be recorded, stored, shared, and revisited indefinitely. At present, the evidence is persuasive, and the rise of the camera phones offers one of the most convincing explanations for the decline of nightlife and public social risk-taking. The spread of camera phones coincides almost perfectly with the moment young people began withdrawing from many forms of public social experimentation. Perhaps the decline of drinking, nightlife, and public risk-taking is not primarily about alcohol at all. Perhaps it's about the disappearance of a world in which mistakes could be forgotten. The early 2000s may have marked the end of a social condition that had existed for most of human history. The possibility of being stupid in public and then being forgotten.